Hello and welcome back. So we're going to keep working on this. I have a few little things I want to do. So we're still in Blender here. So in the last tutorial we kind of took this and we shifted into Unity. So I just want to make a couple of changes here. So the walls and the ceiling are all one object, but my player probably won't be jumping so high as to go through the ceiling. So there's sort of wasted collision mesh up here. So I'm going to separate out my roof and optimize my game a little bit more. So in Blender I'm going to select these walls and roof, and I'm going to go to face select and select all of these. I'm going to separate them and then I'll export them as a separate FBX file, and then I'll export the walls again as a separate FBX file. Now the main focus of this little tutorial here, which won't be too long, is to use the cell fracture tool to make some rubble. So we'll have a look at how we would do that. And I'll just give kind of decimate one pillar, and then we will. There's my roof. Okay, so I'm just going to hide that, and we'll see. Then you can, once you have an idea of how to do one, you can ponder how many of them you want to break up. So I'm going to take this here, and it's got a mirror modifier on it. So I'm going to apply this. I wouldn't normally apply it, but I want to be able to separate or isolate one pillar. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to take this top one here, and I'm going to delete that. Don't want them. And then I'm going to take these four pillars here, and I'm going to turn them into rubble. So very simply, I'm just going to go L, P, so separate by selection, and there we go. So these are separate objects now. I'm going to take these pillars here and I'm going to give them some physics. So I want these to be broken into pieces and kind of crumble down onto the floor. So in order to do that in Blender, I need to, set up a simulation. So I'm going to tell Blender that these pillars here are rigid bodies, but they're not active, they're not going to move, they're going to be passive like a floor or a wall. I'm going to tell it to use the mesh of those objects to detect collision. And then I can hide them. And I'm going to do the same with the floor. I'm going to say it's a rigid body and it's passive and use its mesh. That wouldn't really matter for this because it's completely flat. I'm going to hide that and hide that. So now I have these objects here, so I'm going to join them together, Control J, and I'm going to break them up using the cell fracture tool. So I'm going to go Object, oops, select it first, Object, Quick Effect, Cell Fracture. Now there are lots and lots of settings here. The most important one, I suppose, is the number of pieces we're going to break this into. So at the moment, this object is called pillars.001. So I'll rename it, we'll call it bits. So the number of pieces, so it's 4 blocks at the moment. So if we want to split each block into, say, 5 parts, then, 4 5s are 20. So at the moment it's set to 100. So we'll say 30 pieces, roughly. And we'll hit OK. We'll leave all the rest of the other settings at their default. So we'll hit OK. And then this is Blender trying to work that out. Now I'm going to take my original mesh here and I'm going to go GY5. It's going to move it out of the way. I'm not going to work with that. But I won't delete it just in case I need it again. And then I'm going to come over here. Now you can see it's already broken up into different pieces. Now these pieces have no physics. So if I were to start a timeline and press play to run the simulation, nothing's going to happen because nothing's moving. So I'm going to take this one piece here and I'm going to say it's a rigid body and that it's active. It's got, I don't know how much that would weigh. Let's say it weighs 5 kilograms. And I'm going to again tell this to use its mesh to work out its collision. Now I want to copy this to all of the other pieces. So there's a simple way to do that. I'm just going to press B and draw a box around it, and I'm going to go Object, Rigid Body, Copy from Active. So now all of these objects here have the same settings as the original. and we're going to run our simulation. Just if you want to copy from one object to many objects, there is in Blender a built-in copy tool that you have to kind of turn on in add-ons. If you type in copy, you can get this one here, copy attributes, and it's a control C menu, and you can copy all sorts of stuff like color and scale, and you know, we're not going to need it here, but just for your information. So now they all have physics. So let's unhide things. So Alt H. Now I don't need the walls or the ceiling or these, and I don't need the floor collision. So I'm going to press play and see what the simulation looks like. And you know, it's okay, but it has exploded, which is kind of not what I wanted. So we can actually go back, and so you can see where it has literally exploded outwards. Now, you know, we could leave that. That's interesting, but I kind of want it more that has slumped to the ground. So how would I go about doing that? Well, I'm going to go back and select one object, just for ease of copying attributes. Just going to hide the rest of it. So I'm going to select this one, and then over here I've got the settings of the rigid body kind of settings for this piece. So I'm just going to have a look at some of the things I can set here. So I can set you know, characteristics of its dynamics and its sensitivity and its surface response, how much friction there is. But the thing that's most interesting, or I'm most interested in, is this here margin, which is 0.04, which is 4 centimeters. So basically it's detecting collision 4 centimeters outside of its own mesh, which basically means each of these meshes is sort of overlapping each other by 4 centimeters, which isn't a lot, but the physics engine doesn't allow or doesn't want these things to overlap, so it sort of pushes them apart, and hence we get an explosion. So if I bring this to 0, there's no overlapping, so the collision is based on just the mesh, and therefore they should sort of slide over each other as opposed to pushing each other apart. So let's see if my logic holds, and we will draw a box here and do the same again. We'll go Object, Rigid Body, Copy from Active, and now we've turned off that sort of extra margin for the other pieces as well. So now let's go Alt H and then hide the bits we don't want to see, and then let's run our simulation and see what happens to our pieces here. Okay, so this is much more, now there's still some sort of pushing each other apart, but then that's the nature of what's going on. So this is much more kind of contained. So let's every time you press play, you basically run the simulation a new time, and so it's going to be different every single time. Now if it's playing in a loop, it won't change, and you can see here there's all sorts of errors. It's not they haven't set still, so it's going to stop it there, and you know, that looks interesting to me. There's pieces, so if I look through the camera and I turn on my view here, and the only one that doesn't really work is this one that looks like it should have fallen over. So maybe we'll run that one more time, and what we might do is just manually place that one. Okay, so how do we go about the next step? Well, the next step is kind of interesting. So let's pick the frame that we want to rest upon. So there's still things moving over here at frame 76, and I think it's settled by frame 100. So I'm going to say frame 100, and I'm going to hide my environment. Now, were I to press play here, these would obviously all fall because there's nothing holding them together. So I'm going to take this object here. Now, if I want to basically say like remember this, or somehow like apply this animation to this, not have it as a simulation. There's no modifier to apply, or there's no particle effect, etc. So how you do that is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say object rigid body apply transformation. Oop, I missed it there. Apply transformation. And then, as before, we'll take all of these and we'll go object rigid body and copy from active. Just for, we'll say apply transformation as well. So this is our animation on frame 1. So it has applied, so when we press play here, it's still, because they're rigid bodies, it's still working on them, but this is our animation. Now, I didn't apply that one. I don't know why that one's still there. I'm just going to delete it. Okay. So, so that's my, they're my pieces now. So let's go to solid mode, and I'm going to, again, Alt-H on hide things, and then hide the ones we don't want to see. No, didn't mean to do that. And those ones. So let's see how this piece here is lying. So I'm going to take this piece here and rotate it. And maybe rotate it there. GZ. Oh, we'll move that in a bit. Okay. And we'll look at what that looks like. Now, I'm going to press Shift F, and now I'm kind of in an FPS mode in Blender. So I'm not actually running a simulation here, so I can just kind of walk around and have a look at what this looks like. Now, there's a few things that we can notice. Some of it looks excellent. Some of it's got some texture stretching, like on this block here. So we need to fix that. And on that one, and on, you know, a few of them have texture stretching. So we're going to fix the texture stretching before we go and export anything. So I'm going to hide everything again that I don't want. I'm going to take all of these, I'm going to take that and delete it. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to go to wireframe mode here, and that little guy there, don't need him. And I'm going to select all of these and have one active object, not the camera. And I'm going to go Control J. So, and we'll call this bits. Now, it's telling me there's one other bit that I'm missing, so I'm just going to delete that. And this is my bits here. So this is one single object. And I'm going to go to Look Dev, and we're going to very quickly jump into edit mode. And I'm going to split my view and turn this into my UV image editor. Oops. And we'll get our base color. So let's just go through it as quickly as we can and see what pieces need to be unwrapped. So I'm going to go to face select, so that needs to be fixed. So I'm going to go U unwrap. You can see it's too big, so we'll make that smaller. That and that need to be unwrapped, and probably these here. In fact, we could probably do a few of them in one foul swoop. So we'll unwrap them, select them all, and scale them down a bit. And so I'll just do all of that. Okay. Now I could just unwrap all of it and probably get a better result. So let's try that. We'll unwrap the whole thing and have a look at our results here. And this needs the opposite, needs to be scaled up. Okay, yeah, that's giving me probably a better result, because I think I probably, if the other method, I would have missed faces. So these are my bits here, and I can choose in Unity whether to give this physics or not. So I could make the pieces smaller by increasing the number of them, and therefore I could just walk through them, or if I wanted to, if there's significant large pieces, we can decide in Unity that what we want to do is sorry, I'm just fixing these here, is give them actual collision. Okay, so let's export this. So we're going to go File, Export, FBX, and I'm going to put this onto my desktop, and I'm going to call this bits, and I'm going to make sure I have selected objects only, and I'm going to export that. Then let's get rid of this UV image editor and go Alt-H, and we're going to select just the roof and go File, Export, FBX, and we want a roof. And then we want to export the walls. File, Export, FBX, and just the walls. And then finally what we want is we want to export, so I'm going to hide that and hide that. I'm going to export the pillars again because they've changed, because there's one missing. So I'm going to go File, Export, FBX, and we're going to export the pillars. The floor has not changed, so I can hide the pillars now, but the pillar kind of collision has changed. So again, this has a mirror modifier on it, so I'm going to apply this, and I'm going to take this surface here and go GZ and bring it down to just below here, so I can actually stand on this if I wanted to in Unity. So with that change there, I'm going to go File, Export, FBX, and export my pillar collision. Okay, so that's quite a bit to have done. So we'll Alt-H, look to our camera, hide that, turn that on there, and we'll go File and Save, where our cave has changed somewhat. And let's pop into Unity. And so we've quite a bit of importing to do. So I'm just going to go back to my 2x3 layout, which is my preference for using Unity. So in my FBX here, so the cave walls, they've changed because they're separated from the roof now. The floor has not changed, the floor collision hasn't changed, the pillar collision, that has changed, and the pillars, they have changed. So that's all we have left. So let's import our FBXs now. So I'm going to go import new asset, go to my desktop, and I want the bits, and I want the floor. Nope, I don't want the floor, the bits, pillar collision, pillars, roof, and walls. So I'm going to import all those. And let's see, we can see that, yeah, that pillar is missing, so that's gone straight in there. I'm going to put the roof across. It would seem to be in the correct place. Put the walls in, and it has remembered to put these materials on. And then the other thing we need to put in is bits. So I'm going to drag and drop that in there. And again, they're all appearing in the correct place because they are all sort of in the correct place in Blender. So let's just see if this works, if it's sitting where it should be sitting. That looks right. So let's look through our our rigid body FPS controller here. So I'm going to press play, and we should get our game here. And I'm in, and now I can walk around, and I haven't put my pillar collision in, but these pieces look like they're sitting on the floor. Might need to lower them just fractionally. Well, that looks okay. All right, so where's my pillar collision? So we'll drag and drop that in, and this can be deleted, and cave walls can be deleted, and there's my pillar collision. We're going to add a physics mesh collider and then turn off the mesh renderer, so that way I can collide with them. And my floor and my floor collision, yeah, and I can turn off that mesh, and we'll press play. And actually, let's go full screen on that so we can see what's going on. Okay, so here I am in Unity. I have to obviously fix the outside and the lighting. There's a lot to do, but that's my basic sort of environment. And you can see that I've kind of smashed up a pillar there. Now I need to work on coloring stuff in and texturing, etc. But we'll get to that. Okay, so not looking too bad for now, and we'll leave it there for now.